Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Paranormal, the New Normal. The show where, once again, I, your host, Jeremy, try to make the world seem more normal. Does it ever fucking happen? God, no. God, no. We should just give up hope by now, but we trudge on, hoping someday maybe it'll happen. But, it ain't going to happen. It ain't going to happen. I can say it every show. It ain't going to happen. But once again, to traverse this voyage, I brought a guest with me who, well, she might help us traverse it in a very fun way. So we'll get to that in a minute, though. My guest this week is Leslie Draffin, integrative somatic psychedelic guide, podcast host, and so much more other stuff. And we'll get into all that in a little bit, folks. First things first, how you doing today, Leslie?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited.
Oh, me too. I actually haven't had this topic on the show as much as people would think. So we will enjoy talking about it, but let me ask you the first question I ask everybody on this show. What got you into the spiritual world that eventually led to what you do now?
I think for me, what got me into this is being raised deeply religious. My dad was a preacher in the deep south of the United States. So I lived a very conservative religious life, and I was a good little Christian soldier. And still something didn't quite sit with me quite right. When I got into my 20s, I really started to question a lot of things. And because of other circumstances in my life, going through eating disorders and abusing alcohol, I really began to disconnect. And then finally, around the age of 32, right around this time of the year, January 2019, I sort of just had this connection with the moon that I can really only describe as like watching the full wolf moon and feeling like this entire vibration happening in my whole body, that I suddenly began to understand the difference between religion and spirituality. And so as I began to grow my spiritual beliefs and my spiritual gifts, I started to question the way that I was raised and find new ways to connect with the great source, the great, connector of all of us. And so I think that that was really what began my spiritual journey. And another big part of it was reconnecting to my menstrual cycle.
Yes, which well, I've been told for women that's a very important thing. I'm a man, so I was raised in the 90s with as little knowledge as possible. But
Right.
not my choice, just the way we were brought up in the 90s. But I've learned more being a married man and learned things I didn't want to learn. But but that's okay. It's all human at the end of the day. So I don't no hatred here for it. But well, some of the side effects, maybe. I'm a married man, I said, but I have to deal with the side effects. But so you felt the connection to the moon, though. I've yet to hear that on one of my 200 something episodes. So that's that's sticking with me right now. What is that like? Like a connection to the moon? Like is it something you only feel at night, or is it something that you feel like throughout the day still, even though the moon's not visible?
I think that once you connect with the moon, you feel it all the time. For me, it was like this vibration that literally like started in my vulva and my pussy and was like all through my whole body. Like this just light that suddenly came on. And so I started to do moon rituals, to do moon gazing. And for me, I think one of my favorite things is seeing the moon in the daytime. Now, I'm not someone who fully like understands astronomy, and I don't truly understand like why do we see the moon in the daylight without it being a full moon always? Like I don't get that. Like people have tried to explain it to me. I've tried to research it. It doesn't compute. But I love like getting a little glimpse of her in the daylight. So I think that I connect with it both night and day. And for me, what also really helped was connecting with the deities of the moon, like Selene, and any of the big deities that have connection to her, like Diana, Demeter, all of those deities as well.
Ooh, deities! I love deities in the show. I do. Everybody knows who Selene is. If you ever read any werewolf fiction, you have to know who Selene is, 100%. But the other one, Demeter, that's Greek, if I'm not, or Roman. Is that Greek or Roman? I can't. It's
Demeter, I think, is.
Demeter. Yeah, that's
yeah.
Greek. I want to say that's.
I think she's Greek. Yeah, she's Persephone's mother.
Well, yeah, okay, that's Greek. Yeah. Persephone, I know. So yeah, every ancient civilization has had connections to the moon, and as far as not seeing it during the day, yeah, I think it's freaking awesome. I'm always like, look, kids, a Death Star, but but And I think when you can't see it during the day, it has something to do with, like, the way the sun's positioned at this
I think
point
so.
where you are on Earth,
Yeah.
and that's why you can't see it, but when you can see it, like, all day long, which is rare, that's pretty cool. It's
Mhm.
I don't know, it's to me, it's always stood out too. So, gotta ask, now that I asked my first question, I have to ask my famous second question here, and that is, have you had any experiences with spirits, ghosts, aliens, cryptids? It's less likely, but I always have to ask.
You know, the more I get onto this path, the more that I, voraciously learn about the occult and spirituality, um, I feel like I saw, like, shadow people when I was little, like the shadow man with, like, the big, like, hat,
The
and
Hatman.
yeah, like, I remember, there was this ghost story that a friend of mine had told me when I was really little, and I can't remember what her name was. Wilhelmina, I think is the name of the ghost story, but she, like, had red eyes, and I would think that I would see her in my closet. Now, was this being me, a very religious child who was also superstitious? Was this me being afraid, or was this me seeing things? I don't really know. Um, I think that for me, while I don't believe I've ever had an experience with, seeing anything in particular, I certainly believe in aliens. And I very much get like vibes. Like my intuition is strong. So if I'm out in the woods at night or if I'm in a place that feels like a little bit weird, is that more like me and like a ghostly encounter, or is it me just picking up on energy? I'm not sure. But no, I haven't really seen anything unexplainable. My mom told me back when she was little that she did see something that she thought was a UFO. And I live in Texas near a military
Mhm.
base where like weird shit does happen in the sky. And it's always explained as like some type of military aircraft. Who can say? Um, so
Well,
no,
actually,
not really.
since you're connected to the moon, I gotta ask, what do you think about the theory that the moon is a hollow moon and is a base of some kind for an extraterrestrial species?
I don't really know if I've ever actually even heard that theory. Like maybe I don't it wouldn't doubt I wouldn't doubt it. I mean,
I mean,
I think we're all in a simulation, and I think that basically the aliens and the higher life forms are watching us and like putting things around. I don't know. Is it a base? Could be. I don't know if we actually ever made it to the moon. I don't think I believe that.
oh yeah, I truly don't believe we landed on the moon. I think that was fake just to beat Russia out. But
Mhm.
I mean, see, but part of me, my logical side is like, but if she has a connection to the moon, wouldn't it have to be a real thing then? Like, what, if it was an alien base? I don't feel like you could have connections to it.
Yeah, and I think that, and that's I guess why I also question that whole idea. But then again, could it still be and still have a connection to it? Maybe. For me, when I just look at the indigenous peoples of our planet and how ancient ancestors of ours have always had such a deep connection to this thing that we look up in the sky, as well as how I know that the moon influences the tides of the womb, the
Mhm.
menstrual cycle, the hormones of those with uteruses. Um, I feel like it's definitely some type of real entity, but I think that even it could still be maybe it could still be your idea about the alien
I mean,
spaceship. I don't know.
I guess if we are in a simulation, then technically they can make anybody feel anything they want. So I guess it all would play out. But before we dive into that deep wormhole and don't even talk about what we're here to talk about, we could move on. Well, we're going to talk about something, folks, that we haven't really talked about in this show too much. It's been brought up here and there by some guests, but it just never has been the full topic of an episode. We're going to talk about psychedelics, which is
Mhm.
something I've barely ever partaken in, but I've always been curious and wanted to try some things. But now, as a parent, the opportunity is kind of gone for a while until kids are older. But so let's just start off with what got you into the psychedelics? So, like, what made you want to start exploring them?
Yeah, so I was raised in the 90s. I was raised post Reagan era where drugs were bad, very bad, like your
Mhm.
brain on drugs. We remember the commercials. And I had a deep fear of yeah, like losing my mind. And so I didn't actually experiment with any psychedelics until my 30s. And
Hmm.
I did a couple of recreational trips. And then when I was really going through a very, very dark night of the soul, I heard on a podcast about how microdosing psilocybin, which are magic mushrooms, could help with some of the things that I was experiencing: mental health struggles, problems with libido, and stress. And so I hired a coach who was fantastic, and I started microdosing. And in that several month period of working with that coach, I also did a full dose journey, the first intentional full dose journey. I did it on my birthday, and I was alone, felt incredibly safe, felt incredibly connected to the spirit of the medicine, very connected to myself. And I had what can only be described as like an incredibly spiritually transformative journey where I was like, I met the mother goddess. I was connected with myself. I am not someone who has physical human children. I have a dog, and he came to me as a human child in the trip and was like my guide the whole time. But I remember being like so connected with the energy of the universe and like sitting at the feet of this very like lizard like mother goddess, primordial deity. And it was something that just I immediately knew, like, this is like gonna be part of my answer, right? And so through microdosing and as well as that full dose journey, I really began to see the things that were keeping me from reaching my fullest potential. I was able to uncover some big root wounds inside my subconscious. And so I really went into the psychedelic journey hoping for answers, and I got those answers and so much more.
Interesting. And when you say microdosing, I'm assuming you're
Yeah.
taking like a very minimal amount so you can still function completely while just having it in your system. Okay.
Exactly. So the big difference between microdosing and full dose journeys is a full dose journey is usually something between 2 and even up to 10 grams where you are gone. Like you are on a trip to another galaxy and you cannot drive. You need to just be safe wherever you are. Microdosing involves taking a tiny bit. So we're talking zero point 0.1 to zero point 0.5 grams. Zero point 0.5 being kind of on the higher end, but it always depends on your own individual sensitivity. And when we microdose, you can still do everything you need to do. I used to be a news anchor. I would microdose and anchor the news. You can drive, you can parent. It doesn't impact your ability to still function in your everyday life. And that's one of the big benefits to microdosing versus experiencing those full dose journeys.
Which makes sense. I mean, and that's a smart way to get into it, I would say, rather than those kids who just get a bag of mushrooms and go in the woods and eat them
Yes.
and end up in bed on a tree somewhere because they think they're talking to following something. So, I mean, we've all heard the horror stories, but I mean,
Mhm.
it's just, and the fact that I mean, micro, the fact that it affects, that could help with libido issues and all that is just interesting. I wish I knew that in my 20s. Goddamn. But this wasn't
Yeah.
really a topic in that time. This was not a topic. This was not something anybody would talk about. I mean,
Right.
the kids who did mushrooms in the field were the weird kids and the
Yeah.
losers that nobody that your parents warned you against hanging out with. So
Exactly, exactly. And I think that for me, when I really started this journey, having so much indoctrination around religion and also like following like towing the line, and having a lot of fear around drugs, I had to
mhm.
do a lot of deconditioning and deprogramming of my own belief systems because the things that we think about these medicines are told to us for a reason. The reason that they're illegal is not because the government's worried about us hurting ourselves when we trip balls. It's because they're worried that when we understand we're all one and we are from love and we are connected, that will be much less controllable and they can't have their agenda.
Yeah, and which I mean, and we all know religion likes agendas. That's a very popular topic in the show is the agenda of organized religion and
Yeah.
the reptilians they are. So, but so, but supposedly women are more they get more they're more it's more beneficial for them to microdose than men. I mean, is
So that's
that
a
just because of the menstrual cycle or is there other reasons as well?
So that's a theory that I created about a year and a half, 2 years ago that was just a hypothesis from me. And the reason I, hypothesized that this was the case is because of a couple key things. One, we know that women are more likely to be diagnosed with things like PTSD, anxiety, and depression, all of which are very benefited by psilocybin. We also know that women have cyclical and chronic pain. And that's another thing that they are studying as far as psychedelics and how that can impact things like migraines and the menstrual cramps. And then finally, because of the fact that we've seen just everybody, but women, I think specifically, especially post pandemic, have a lot of mood issues and feel just like not happy. Because of the way that psilocybin impacts serotonin in the body and the way that it allows you to really start to process your emotions, it does impact our mood. And so, my hypothesis was that women and people with periods could benefit way more than possibly anyone else when it comes to microdosing with support, because that's the key issue here, right? You can microdose on your own and you may be faced with things in your shadow that you aren't ready to look at. But just like I did when I hired a guide, I hired a coach, and why I became one myself is because having someone there to support you and walk you through those things, very much like a therapist, but one who's also allowing this other mystical, spiritual, psychedelic medicine to come in, can really help women tap into what it is that holds them back. I think really helps us tap into our divine feminine, which I think everybody really needs, male and female here on this planet. And
Mhm.
that's really the biggest reason why I have seen in my own life and my clients' life the transformative power of this medicine.
And hi, Wesley. Thank you for watching. I don't know what you're going off about in the comments, but okay. Not sure which ones you're talking to about that, but okay. Um, gonna pass by that for now. So you created something, a silical microdosing method.
Mhm.
Why don't you break down that method a little bit for us and tell us like what that
Yeah,
consists of, basically?
sure. So whenever you microdose, protocols are usually the pattern or the schedule that you decide to microdose because you don't do it every single day. And so most of these protocols are created by, heavy hitters in the field, and would be, for instance, maybe you are going to take the medicine 3 days a week, or you're going to sit with it every other day. What I did is I looked at the menstrual cycle, which, by the way, and for your viewers or your listeners, it's if you're of reproductive age, you're always somewhere in your menstrual cycle. It's not just when you bleed. So I looked at the different phases of the cycle, which there are four, and I noticed that in the lead up to the bleed, so about a week and a half before the period and through the period, that's when a lot of these cyclical challenges come up. PMS, PMDD specifically. And PMDD, if you're not familiar, is premenstrual dysphoric disorder, which is like PMS on crack. Like, it is horrible. I mean, people
I
are
I'm
incredibly like, yeah, depression, suicidal, like horrible mental health struggles and pain is associated with PMDD. So I created a method where you would sit with the medicine 3 days on, 2 days off in that second half of your cycle, right before your period, to give you more time with the medicine to help its benefits really sink in. And then after your period, you would switch to 1 day on the medicine and 2 days off. This allows for more integration space, which are the days where we aren't taking the medicine into our bodies. And it also allows you to have more time off of the medicine so that you don't become psychologically dependent and you don't build up a tolerance. Because while we cannot get addicted to this type of medicine physically, as humans, we seem to be very much beings that want to latch on to anything that helps us feel good. And that can be psychedelics. They're also, right, not something that can be addictive or habit forming physically. So you don't have to worry about like other quote unquote drugs that can make you feel like you have to have them. It's just a psychological dependency. And so when I created that and started experimenting with this method on myself and then with some clients, what I noticed is decreased PMS symptoms in the form of pain, very decreased mood swings, and just this overall lightness and happiness all month long.
hmm.
And I think one of the reasons why it works is because when you really start to understand the spirit behind the medicine, You understand, again, that this is very much a love consciousness, very much, in my opinion, a consciousness that wants the very best for us. And it allows us this gentle way of looking at what's hidden underneath our subconscious, peeling back those layers and looking at, oh, why am I so pissed off before my period? Well, it's because I'm not setting boundaries. I'm not speaking my truth. Like, I've been holding on to some shit from years and years in the past, and it comes up and it bubbles up. And so
Hmm.
those are some of the reasons why I've noticed that it has been so impactful for women.
And I will say you were 100% right about that last part because I've seen all that in action myself personally.
Yeah.
But oh god, it's put on your helmet, and prepare for war that week.
Yeah.
But basically, so I mean, it sounds like it'd be beneficial to every woman to do this. I mean, it really does. And I mean, yeah, not every woman has the same levels of pain and same symptoms and all that of PMS and PMDD, but
Right.
I mean, I think everyone could use it to some degree. I mean, I'm no expert on women and their anatomy, so I'm not gonna talk my ass anymore and shut my mouth
Right.
right there about that.
No, but you're totally right. People with a period, people without a period, I really think anyone, um, who identifies as a woman can benefit from this. And I think anyone in general who is willing to do the inner work, right, can benefit from this. I just happen to only work with women.
Oh yeah,
But I think what's interesting too is the people that I am seeing really gravitate toward this practice are older women, are women who are or menopause or beyond, because just like what we were saying, they have had decades and decades of self-limiting beliefs, of programming, of indoctrination from the world around us, from the patriarchy, from world organized religions that have made them feel some type of way. And when they reach for this medicine, it could be the last straw for them. They may have tried so many other things, and it can be so beautifully healing for those women in that stage of life, their wise woman crone era, to finally be able to sit with some medicine that is very grandmother energy itself and can help guide them through to that next phase of life where they become the matriarch and they really become this like empowered version of themselves.
yeah. I mean, it makes sense, and I mean, men. I fully believe men can benefit from this too because I
Oh,
mean, we have our
100%.
we may not actually have physical periods, but I definitely have seen men with PMS certain times of the month. Like it's a mental thing. It's not a physical thing. It's a mental thing. But it's
Right.
just what I mean. It definitely exists. I've witnessed it in some guys. I mean, I'm not
Yeah.
gonna say I don't think I have that issue, but my wife may disagree. I don't know.
And what you're explaining and expressing is that is just all of us have energies and emotions and moods, right? And what's interesting, the main difference I see between the men that have come to me who want to work with me, or the men that my friends work with who are also in this space, is that a lot of guys want to reach out for the biohacking abilities of psilocybin, which is really good for focus. I have lots of people that I know, men and women, who microdose and go to the gym, or they'll microdose and work. And when we were speaking about microdosing other substances outside of psilocybin, because by the way, you can microdose a lot of different things, cannabis, LSD, many different substances are microdosed. We saw Silicon Valley really reach into the LSD microdosing world to help them focus on when all of the tech and the programming stuff. So I really think that the way that I work with the medicine and the way that the people I work with it is on a spiritual side of things. And I think anyone who is willing to go into that inner work and look at what's happening, could very much benefit from psilocybin, regardless of your gender.
Exactly. So I mean, it works.
Mhm.
But, like, I'm sure, like any other I mean, because 'cause I've always heard that you don't wanna go do a trip with mushrooms or anything else when you are in a bad way because what's going on in your head will affect your trip. I
Mhm.
mean, so is that
Yeah.
true for
Yep.
microdosing
So
as well?
So the way that these psychedelics work is they're non-specific expanders. And so that's going to elevate anything that you're experiencing. So just like you were saying, if you were to go on a full dose journey where you're experiencing a lot of grief or depression, or you're feeling suicidal, or you're feeling like you're just not quite settled, like you go to a big music festival, or you're at a house party, or so on and so forth, it might make those feelings even bigger. So that's why things like mindset and your environment are so essential in the psychedelic space. Those are called set and setting. And so, yes, that can be really scary for some folks. And even if you aren't experiencing those elevated feelings and emotions, it can still be scary even when microdosing. When these big emotions do come forward, when you have this aha moment, it's sometimes referred to as spiritual emergence or spiritual emergency. When you have either a full dose journey or a microdosing journey, where suddenly you feel these expansive thoughts and feelings that sometimes don't feel safe.
Exactly. I mean, like everything else in life, intention matters.
Yep.
You don't want to have bad intentions for anything you do, because then that it's all manifestation. I mean,
Yeah.
whatever you are manifesting is going to come to be. I mean, if you're
Mhm.
sitting in front of a Ouija board trying to summon a demon and he pops some mushrooms, guess what you're going to see when you pop the mushrooms? You're going to see a demon,
Yeah.
or at least what your mind is consuming at that point to be a demon or something similar.
Yeah.
So, I mean, take them and try to summon God and take them. I mean, I have a feeling that'd be a little more interesting, or that might be scary too. I don't really know. I don't really know. That could You might see a giant gray alien in front of you when you do that. So I don't freaking know. I mean,
There's like the stories that I've heard people talk about, like spiritual surgery, alien surgery happening during journeys. Um, when I was in my training, for the more, I did several different trainings. So when I was in my last training, there was a couple of people, and it was very focused on helping folks through full dose journeys. And the stories that these people were experiencing were, to me, as someone who had only had, I've had some difficult journeys, but nothing like this. Like, they're having full aliens like come and do surgery on their body during their trip. I'm like, that sounds fucking terrifying.
yeah.
And so much more the reason why you want to have somebody to talk to about that either during your trip or after. There's a great project called the Fireside Project that offers free support. It's a hotline you can call in case you're tripping balls and shit gets weird. You can easily find that by Googling Fireside Project. And that's just available to whoever, not
How
just
do you
as someone who's a coach.
how do you get a job at that hotline? Because that sounds like it'd be fun as shit to get those calls.
The training for that is like a year long. It's incredibly intense and it's all volunteer based. So it's, I mean, they're fantastic, a fantastic foundation, a fantastic group that does a lot of good work. Because let's be honest, like, who else are you going to call? You're going to call the cops? They're just going to arrest you. They're
No.
going to help you.
Yeah.
And that's really, again, why I think that this project is so important and why trip sitters are really important or a coach is important, because weird shit can happen. Um, and does happen. And I
100%.
think that those types are the things that suddenly the media picks up on. And as someone who was in the media for 15 years, like I was that, like I get it. Those are the salacious stories that get picked up. When in reality, I think that when we look at even the studies that have been done over the last couple of years, of course, reported by self-reported individuals, there's not a ton of that happening, but it does happen.
Yeah, of course. I mean, and there's always going to be bad with every good. That's just
Sure.
karma. I mean, not karma. That's yin and yang. That's the basic concept of life. I mean, there's
Yeah.
always good and there's always bad. And I mean, there are people who smoke weed and do stupid shit. And
Hmm.
they're the people who have made it look bad for 50, 60 years now. And when most of us just do it and we're normal, it
Yeah.
levels us. It makes us connect to everything better. It's just the way it goes. I mean, I don't. That shit pisses me off. Pissed me off. What the hell's that video? What the hell's that movie from the 50s called? Reefer
Reefer
Madness.
madness.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Oh God, I hate that fucking video. But so psychedelics, they've long been known to help. Like I've been told for a long time that they help heal trauma, and that which how do they do that though? Like, I mean, I'm sure it's scientifically and something to do with the brain, but I might be
Well,
gallivanted.
so the way that psychedelics, especially mushrooms, so we'll talk about psilocybin specifically because that's what I work with. The way that it works within the brain is it helps to reprogram our neural pathways. It can help turn off certain parts of the brain and light up other parts that are responsible for those new habits and patterns. And so where it does a lot of amazing work for trauma, and I'm very careful not to say that psychedelics heal your trauma. You help heal your own trauma. Psychedelics are something that holds your hand while you do it. They are really beautiful at very at a microdose level, slowly unpeeling again the layers of your subconscious and allowing you to see almost like from above, oh, this is why this is what I'm doing. Like, this is the pattern and this is where the root is. And it's almost like you're looking up like a god at your own life and you're able to connect those dots. And so, the way that it helps with trauma healing, in a couple of different ways, is one, it allows you the ability to get back into your body in a lot of For a lot of people, it's why I'm a somatic trained psychedelic guide. So I work with a lot of different body-based modalities because that's where our trauma is stored. And when you're someone who has had a very difficult relationship with your body, or if you have experienced assault or trauma on the body, violence on the body, psychedelics are a gentle way in the microdosing dose level to allow yourself the grace to look at what's going on, especially when you're working with someone who is a trained trauma guide or a psychedelic therapist, because there are some of those too around. And so with the trauma itself, like I said, it's just a wonderful ability to sort of pull back the blinders and really start to see and become able to notice and become aware of what's going on. But the medicine will not do the work for you. You can't expect to just like take some mushrooms and just be like, ta da, I'm healed. Absolutely not. It's the integration that happens afterwards where you start to notice the messages and start to put those different new messages and lessons to work in your life.
And it's so freaking hilarious that you said that, because when you were saying that, I literally was about to be like, yeah, it's like going into creator mode in a game and you're controlling your own character and creating
Yeah.
things for it. So I mean,
Yes.
it's funny when you said step out and play God, I was like, oh, right where I was going with it, right where I was
Yeah.
going. I'm like, that's synchronicity right there. Love it, love it. And I mean, it makes sense. So I mean, same as Reiki, same as energy healing,
Yeah.
all that heals your trauma as well, because you're healing your trauma. It's just ways to open you up in ways you're not used to being opened up. And that sounded way dirtier than I wanted it to. But I mean, well, actually, it's not always a bad thing either. But you know, so when people are going to try microdosing for the first time, say, like, what are some of the best practices they can do? I mean, because I know you probably worked with some people who are just that type of person where they're like, oh, this isn't doing anything. Yum, 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 yum.
Right. Right. So a couple of the really important things to do are, one, ask yourself why. Why are you wanting to welcome this medicine into your life? Um, I have all of the people that I work with journal on that and invite the medicine in, because I want to do this in a way that's respectful to the indigenous cultures that have done this all across the world for millennia, and also respectful to the energy of the medicine. And then logistically, start small. Give yourself a couple of days on that dose before you decide, "Oh, this isn't working." And there's such an interesting, like, myth around microdosing that you're not supposed to feel anything. That's not actually true. When you are incredibly tapped into who you are, you will feel things. You may feel more focused or you may feel more relaxed. I usually describe it as like I feel my heart very open, where I just feel like I'm in tune more with nature. I'm in tune more with the people around me. I have a lot more empathy and compassion for those folks who may just be like, I'll see a homeless person on the street and just like break my heart. Like it'll just make you feel so much more attuned to the human condition itself. And so those, I believe, really are things you can feel, even at this microdose level. And then just don't microdose every day. You want to take at least a day off. I usually say 2 days off a week. So in a 7-day period, really only sitting with the medicine 5 days maximum. Because what's so fascinating is in the days where you're not ingesting the medicine, that's where so much of the afterglow effect and the beauty comes alive, because you're really able to, even without having that in your body, notice the changes where you feel more relaxed. Um, as someone who uh, is not a parent but has worked with many parents, something that I've noticed that really is helping moms is their ability to just be more patient with their kids, to be more on their kids' level. And those are things that they're experiencing not only when they're ingesting the medicine, but in the days afterwards as well.
Which, I mean, yeah, as a parent, patience is a very important thing, I
Yeah.
will say. And yeah, it's just, yeah. And if anything that can help that patience, it's always a good thing. And
Mhm.
especially if you can stay in control while doing it, of
Right.
course.
Exactly.
I
Right.
mean,
Like,
basically the microdosing you're describing is basically, to me, it's the equivalent of, taking a puff or two of a vape for weed, or drinking a nip. Like, it's, you drink one nip and you stop. You don't
mhm,
keep going because that's gonna go
yeah.
further down the road then. I mean, but just one nip and you're just kind of like relaxed, sitting back.
Mhm.
You're not at that point yet where you're getting disoriented. You're not at that point yet where anything's going on. You're just sitting there like everything's okay in the world right now. Okay, good, good, good.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of the way I see it. But All right, let's get into a topic that I wanted to leave for a little bit into the episode, just so people didn't hear it right away and be like, "What's this?" And I mean, but I know people are going to want to hear this, so let's talk about psychedelics and how they help the sex side of life. Let's talk
Oh, yeah.
about sex for fuck's sake.
Yes. Let's do it.
So, how do psychedelics help your sex life? Because I mean, I know how weed does, I know how alcohol does, but psychedelics, as I said, I've only partaken once or twice, and there was no sex involved because it was me and all men. So that's not going to be
Yeah,
a time where that gets involved. So,
true.
what? How does it help? Like, what does it do to your body? How does it make it more enjoyable?
So I think for me, and the way that I teach this and the way that the folks that I work with have experienced it, it's not necessarily physically making sex feel better, although it can make you feel more relaxed. What
Mm-hmm.
happens is a deeper connection with yourself and with your partner. So, what happens in a microdosing protocol when I'm working with a client one on one whose intention is to improve their sex life or to become more open, it's usually becoming more open to pleasure or sensuality because I'm working with women who may feel cut off, they may feel blocked, they may just feel like not that into it. Their desire might be really lacking. What microdosing can do, especially with certain practices like homework to go and get a massage or give yourself a massage or masturbate, right? It allows you to begin to tap into what do I like? What do I not like? What is holding me back? Am I not able to focus on the sensations in my body because I'm thinking about on my to-do list? And so microdosing really is a wonderful way to, again, just like with trauma, help you notice, okay, what is it that I really want? What is it that I don't want? And then when we bring in that partner, first of all, you could do this where both people microdose and then you decide to do a little bit of a massage session, or you just cuddle, or you have an intimate discussion around what is it that you really want from sex? What is it that you feel like we're lacking? And microdosing has a wonderful way of sort of allowing you to see both sides. And when you're doing it with intention, and not like naked in the bedroom. We don't have these big conversations where we're at this vulnerable stage of, about to have sex or we just had sex. Microdosing can be a really great connector between those partners to say, hey, like this is some things that I would really want. And it just sort of allows you to say what you fucking mean without, again, feeling as self conscious. Now, if you're listening to this and you're like, that sounds crazy. Know that this isn't something that I give homework to clients like day one, right? This is multiple weeks into working with someone
Of
where we have
course.
already worked with their self because I think that the key here and what I think a lot of folks never learned about sex because obviously our country is like so sex phobic is that the connection to self first is not selfish. It is how you get into your body, how you experience true sensuality and true pleasure. And if you don't know what the fuck you like, you're not going to know how to have it with someone else. And
Exactly.
so microdosing helps you decide what it is that you really enjoy and then allows that bridge to happen between you and a partner so that you can express yourself in a way that will ultimately, hopefully, lead to you getting your needs and desires and wants met.
Which okay, I kind of lied a minute ago. I just thought about it, and when you said masturbation, I was like, wait a minute. Okay, that's okay. So I did lie a little bit there because the one time I did acid once. That was my
Okay.
one psychedelic I did was acid,
Woo, a
and
big one.
yeah, literally being sold on a street corner in Worcester. Because we were on our way to the Palladium for an ICP Insane Clown Posse concert, and yeah, that's the best part. And literally, this me and my cousin are walking by this guy, and literally, my cousin, I didn't hear what the hell the guy said, even I couldn't understand him. My cousin, who has been in that role for a long, was in that role for a long time, knew right away what the guy was saying,
Yeah.
and I'm like, and my cousin's like, "Do you have any cash?" I'm like, "Why?" He's like, "This guy has acid and he has cash," and I'm like, "Okay." I'm like, "Yeah, here." And so we went to a bar, had a couple beers, did the acid, and we're like, all right, let's go to the concert. And fun fucking concert. I blacked out during parts of it. I'm assuming that was the acid, but blacked out during parts of it completely and don't remember what happened. Nothing happened to me or anyone around me, so I'm assuming I didn't do anything stupid. I might have just been. I honestly wish there was camera footage just so I could have freaking see myself like either dancing my ass off or something like that. I don't freaking know. But went home, dropped my cousin off at his house, went home. I mean, I was perfectly fine. I was functioning. I could drive and everything else, but dropped my cousin off, went to my house, couldn't get to sleep for the life of me. Literally, just couldn't get to sleep. And listener discretion advised at this part. Just saying. So if you have kids in the room, this might be a time to leave. I mean, if they didn't leave by this point already, then God help you. But got home, couldn't sleep a wink. Fucking hard as a stone. Just fucking not able to sleep for like hours. Just laying there like, where's a fucking girl and anyone? It's just so yeah. I mean, and of course I did something to try to get rid of it because I wanted to go to fucking sleep. It was like 3:00 in the morning. I wanted to go to sleep, but it was not coming. So I mean, and I will say, one of the most intense sessions of my life, and I'm assuming that's because of the acid. And
Yeah, probably.
I mean, and this is before kids were in my life or anything like that. So no, this is not a bad parent movement. And for anybody thinking that, this is before I was living with kids, before I was even had kids in my life. So yeah, this was a long time ago. Well, like 8 years ago, whatever. But so I mean, I can see how psychedelics actually do improve it somewhat. And like I asked my cousin the next day when I went over to his family's house for dinner, and I'm like, I told him about it because we talk about shit like that once in a while. And he's like, oh yeah, he's like my girlfriend. He's like, I don't want to say her name, but he's like, my girlfriend got it good that night.
Yeah.
It's just like, yeah, trust me, I was all over Krista, and okay, it's for their name, but whatever. they don't listen anyway, so it's all good. But he's like, yeah, I was all over. He's like, it's to be expected. I'm like, oh, okay, good. At least I know something's not broken in my head now. But it's just like, and hello, Shelly. Sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong. But so I mean, yeah, I mean, it definitely I do have experience with that. I could say that. I totally forgot about that until you said that. I'm like, oh wait a minute, that's not actual sex, but it's kind of. So okay, yeah. So this is also kind of a personal question, but is microdosing also a substitute to Viagra, Cialis for men?
I don't know. I don't know if it has that exact same impact because of the way that Cialis and Viagra works, is I think a lot different than the way that psychedelics work, psilocybin specifically. But I think that it could definitely make it feel better, but I'm not sure it's going to actually like prolong an erection like those
I
medicines
mean,
do.
my thinking is, and this is my thinking based on my own experience and just general scientific knowledge, I think it depends on what the initial issue is.
Possibly, yeah.
Because I mean, if it is actually like a blood flow, blood pressure issue, then maybe the psychedelics are not going to help as much because they're not going to change the way your blood flows or raise your blood pressure or any of that. I'm assuming, right?
Actually, some of these psychedelics do impact blood pressure and can impact blood flow. That's one of the reasons why psilocybin and some of the others have been tested in chronic migraines because of the way that it can be a vasoconstrictor and change the way that blood flow happens. But I'm not sure. And because I don't work with men, I've actually never even thought about this question. So I'm not sure how it
Wow.
would impact.
Hey,
Yeah.
look at me, folks. Thought-provoking questions here. What the fuck?
Yes. I'm not
On
sure.
Saturday morning, you're lucky I had my coffee, people. But well, I mean, and actually, then it should work as a substitute for Viagra all the time then, because that was the one half I was actually going to question whether or not it would work. I mean, okay, we should be looking into at a further date, people. But and I mean, the other side of it is the mental side. Men who have the
Right.
mental block, and that's why it's not happening for them, and that's why they take Viagra. I mean, microdosing would work for that. I'm assuming 100% because it's all mental.
Yeah, for sure. And I think and Shaylee actually pointed this out in the chat, Molly. MDMA and Molly, we know for a long time have been used to help couples reconnect. And if you've ever taken MDMA or Molly, I mean, everything feels good, right? So even like the lightest touch of breeze on your skin can feel orgasmic. And so that's another of the not necessarily earth or plant medicines, but the synthetic medicine that has really been beneficial to help people connect with sex and connect with their own sense of pleasure. And I think mentally, kind of what you're mentioning, and what I was saying in the beginning, right? Like we need to figure out what it is that we really want and what we really desire. And if for some reason you have had a trauma or you've had violence done on your body in a sexual way, that I think is another reason why these medicines can be helpful to help you uncover, okay, this is maybe what is blocking me, and with help and with support, hopefully move through it. So Yeah, it's interesting, right? Like the way that these substances impact our bodies and the way that we can use them to improve our sex lives can be just so transformative for our life in general. Because I really believe that without a strong sense of connection to sensuality and pleasure, like what are we here for? Like we're here to have this human experience, regardless of the fact that we are these spiritual beings. And sex and pleasure are very key parts of that.
And I mean, to your example right here, Charlie just said, I'm weird. I personally do not like sex on Molly. And I mean, I would assume that's because it's maybe overstimulation on Molly for some people. Maybe I never done Molly or MDMA, so I can't comment. But I would assume that maybe overstimulation. I mean, it's possible. It's definitely possible to be overstimulated. So I mean, in multiple different ways in life. So
Yeah.
I mean, maybe I don't know. I'm not. Yeah. Okay. I
Yeah.
was right. Yay! I like when I'm right, but like any man. But I mean, so yeah, it makes sense that psychedelics. I mean, yeah, and psychedelics have been used. You ask any hippie from the '60s, and they'll tell you psychedelics improve sex. So they'll tell you
Yeah.
that. But then the fact that they had older couples using Molly just kind of didn't know that, and that kind of disturbs me a little. I kind of want to see these. I kind of want to see them like after they're all done and just like how they act. Like it'd just be an interesting documentary to watch at least.
Yeah.
But so, but connecting to pleasure, that you said it heals trauma, which
Mhm.
does that. I mean, I guess because I guess in your mind you would start relating your parts of your body to pleasure again instead of trauma, and eventually it overtakes it completely, and trauma would be wiped out.
So yes, and what I mean by the fact that pleasure can help heal trauma is when we think about the way that our body gets into fight, flight, or freeze, one way that we can create safety in our body is to reach out for things that help us feel more in that safety zone, which are things that help us feel good or things that make us happy. And so when I say pleasure in this regard, I don't necessarily mean sex or even things that have to do with your genitals. It's looking for little glimmers, is what I call them. So, glimmers are things in life that make you feel a little bit of joy. It can be getting a massage, it can be holding hands, it can be looking at a bomb ass sunset, which I have so many epic sunsets in my backyard. And so those are all in my experience and from my opinion, things that help us tap into pleasure, right? Things that help us to really feel more in our bodies. And so those are ways that pleasure can help us tap into what's really impacting us, be it trauma, be it self-limiting beliefs, and help us move through states of arousal, like sympathetic or survival mode arousal, and basically get back into a stage of safety and support.
Well, I'm glad that I'm definitely glad that you straightened that out a little bit. And okay, apparently I was a little bit wrong. It's not overstimulation. It's just boring and not enjoyable. And she couldn't finish, and neither could he. So apparently, laying atop a large speaker while rolling damn near gets her there, though. And it's all about the music, which vibrations. I get that. I mean,
Yeah,
washing machines have been a wife's best friend for a long time for reasons.
yeah.
But just don't do the thing we all heard the urban legend about in the '90s and use a broom. Ugh. That still gives me nightmares thinking about that. It really does. Going through the brain and everything. God damn. We all heard that urban legend in the '90s, folks. I don't know. I doubt it was true. I really doubt it was true. But I mean, still. So for the last for the last 10, 15 minutes of this show, this will be for the women. I mean, okay, the last part was a little bit for the women too, but this part's fully for the women. I'm gonna let you talk about the other thing you special in, which is the menstrual cycle, and I'm gonna get a little education here, folks. So forgive me if I say something that's out of my ass. Just putting that out there now. So, how do psychedelics help a woman's menstrual cycle?
I think like kind of what we said a couple of minutes ago, I think that for me, the big reason why it helps us in our menstrual cycle is it helps us to connect more deeply with our womb space. And when we can awaken our womb and connect with that part of ourselves, which I see as the creative life force energy. I mean, obviously, it's like how we create life and create our manifestations. Um, that I believe really can help with a lot of different cyclical problems and just help us connect more with the natural rhythms of our body. So when we look at psilocybin, I see it as a very divine feminine energy, a very grandmother energy. When we look at the fact that prehistorically spores came to this planet to help break it down so that it could become the earth and the soil that is the nutrient rich soil that created this planet, created this life. Mushrooms help make that happen. There was just a study that came out that was like magic mushrooms were on this planet fucking millions of years before people. And so when we look at that as this like um, great creator energy, this creatrix energy, and we look at even the mycelium network itself and how connected it is beneath the surface of the planet, those again are, I believe, very spiritual ways to connect with the medicine and why women really can benefit from this energy itself because of how connected we can be to our cycles. When we are disconnected from our cycles, we're kind of just living in our heads. We're living in this very hustle based world that is very built for masculine energy and male hormones. And so, when we can connect with our cycle in any way, shape, or form, be it through microdosing or just cyclical living, I really feel like that is how women step into their power and begin to see something that has been stigmatized and said to be disgusting and shameful and bad as something that truly can be a power source for you. Because living in alignment with your cycle means that you understand your moods, you understand your metabolism shifts throughout your month, you understand what you need and what you need to set as far as boundaries. And when I started to live in alignment with my cycle in 2020, first of all, it was like a complete roller coaster from hell after I came off of the pill. But when I finally understood how to live cyclically, I was better able to connect with myself. I was better able to communicate with my husband. And I was better able to manage my energy throughout the month so that I didn't experience as much burnout and stress. And so, psychedelics and psilocybin specifically, again, like we've talked about, help you unravel the layers of your own internal taboo around the cycle, your own internal shame around being a woman, and can then again help awaken that connection to the womb and the cycle, which I feel is instrumental in any woman's life.
It definitely is. I mean, this is a huge part of a woman's body, a huge part of her physiology, and I mean,
Yep.
you should be connected to it. I mean, if you think about it from the opposite perspective, a man, our dick's not even that big a part of our physiology compared to everything else. It really isn't. I mean, and I ain't talking size, guys, so don't feel all shamed here, but it's just overall, it's not that big a part of our body. We don't do that much with it as women do with theirs. Like
Mhm.
we could basically just shoot our hose and turn it on and off. That's all we can do. But we still treat it like it's the most, well, some of us treat it like it's
Yeah.
the most important part of
Like
our
your
body.
little self, like how like everyone refers to it as like little whatever, right? Like it's a powerful version of you, like it's a piece of you. And I don't think that most women think that about their cycle.
I mean, okay, I don't like to call it little anything because that's just demeaning. But uh, I mean, whenever someone says your thing with your little head, I'm like, what? This one? I'm like, Jesus. But it's so. I mean, it's at the end of the day. I mean, what I was getting at is think like a man. Like honestly, it's like think like you need to think like a man. You need to think that's the most part of your body, and for women, it technically is somewhat. I mean, of course, everything else matters too. You've got to worry about your heart and lungs
Mhm.
and all that good stuff too. But that part of your body controls so much compared to everything else that it's just why wouldn't you want to control it? I mean,
Mhm.
why wouldn't you? I mean, yes, for years everybody just said get on the pill, and that's from the effects of the pill could be damning, it could be life
Yeah.
threatening, and it could be scary. So I'm against that. And I mean, yes, I don't want a bunch of unplanned pregnancies in this world either because we're overpopulated enough as is. So I mean, it's a happy medium ground. If you could control it, you know when it's safe, when it's not safe, and you don't have to worry about any of the prevention methods. And there you go.
Yeah.
I mean, because I mean, if you're actually marking it on a calendar, like I've known women that have done that for 20 years, like marking it on a calendar, like, and they know exactly I'm ovulating here, I'm gonna have my
Mhm.
flow here, whatever. Like it's just the way it goes. And as much as it always skewed me out as a younger man. I mean, as I get older, I'm kind of more accepting of these things because
Mhm.
you have to be an adult. It's just it's not like when you're a kid and you don't even want to question like when you finally find that stuff in your mom's bathroom, you're like, what the hell's this for? But
Right.
that's a whole nother experience. That's a whole nother fucking experience. But so But yeah, I mean, I definitely agree, and that's why I wanted to make sure a portion of this episode was dedicated to that, because I wanted my women listeners to have the message they need to get from to have you on and not talk about it would be a wasted opportunity in my mind. So
Yeah. Yeah. And I think another interesting part, some of the things that I just heard you say, getting skeeved out, thinking like a man, like it's so fascinating, right? That thousands of years ago, this was the norm for women to live in attunement with their cycle. And it's been within the last 50 or 60 years where the birth control pill did come out. And now we have all these other forms of hormonal birth control that really, while they did so many amazing things by allowing women to finally have control over their own reproductive life, um, it really disconnected an entire generation of women from something that is like incredibly sacred and incredibly spiritual. And when I started doing this work, that was such an important part of the piece to me. It wasn't just that I had PCOS and that I didn't get my period for 8 months after I came off of the pill, which I'd been on for 16 years. Like, it was the fact that when I was in that after the moon awakening, I heard within me, like, you are stifling your feminine energy because you're on the pill. You've got to get off of it. And it took me another 18 months to finally quit the pill. But when I did, something unleashed within me that finally made me feel like a woman, finally made me feel like, okay, this is what it's about. Like, this is how to feel truly lit up and alive, tuned in, turned on, about being here on this planet. And I have to believe that one of the main reasons why we push this pill, not only because of the pharmaceutical industry, but because if women stood in their fucking power, like, it would topple the patriarchy. And that's why the patriarchy rose in the first place, because they were able to subdue and kill the wise women, to kill the witches, to kill the midwives who held on to all of this knowledge. And so for me, part of my mission is awakening women to the fact that you are divine within yourself. And it's tuning into your cycle, it's awakening your womb, and it's tapping into pleasure, whether through psychedelics or not, that I believe is truly the key to helping that happen.
exactly. I mean, Charlie just said it too. Absolutely, like that's 100% what is going on. And see, even right there, the fact that she never even thought of how a boy would feel learning about all of it, like that's you're not thinking about that, and that's like we are half this planet, not exactly
Yeah.
half, or a little bit under half of this planet, but still, I mean, it's you think about how fucked up it is for us to figure out this shit. Like when we're kids, like it's just they don't teach
And
this shit in health class to boys. They separate us out and
no.
fucking don't tell us about it. Which I don't know if they still do because my
Yeah.
kids are not that age yet, thank God, and I don't have to worry about that with them. But I
But
mean,
just
if
think
they still
about if
do, it's you're denying us knowledge that we really should fucking know about. Because
right.
I mean, look back in the '90s, they did a whole episode of King of the Hill called ILAA about Hank having a shop for feminine products.
Yeah.
Like that's how much of a taboo thing it was. There was literally a whole cartoon episode about how taboo it was.
Right.
Like Jesus Christ.
And it's like not only were women getting this entire like um messaging about like just ignore it, just like it's gross, it's going to be painful, like men were it was like this mystery, and when you did find out, it was just like you said, like, it was icky. Think about how much would change if we started to look at this just as much, and just as importantly as the diet that we choose to consume, about our heart health. The American College of Obstetrics and Gynecologists has stated that the menstrual cycle is the fifth vital sign for people with periods, so it is just as important as your temperature and your heart rate, and so on and so forth. And so if we were able to from birth just see this as something that was normal, that wasn't that gross, like, your period blood is not gross. Like, we haven't really talked about this, but I do a lot of blood magic. Period blood is not gross. Like, it's no different than the rest of the blood in your body. um it's packed full with stem cells, and if we were able to see this as something that was normal, like, we could have these conversations, we could raise young men and young women to and everyone in between, to see this as something that is just normal, it's part of life, and it's when we can honor it and live in attunement with it, everybody benefits. Because let's be honest, the second that my husband started to understand my cycle, my mood swings went down, we had much better communication, life was way more peaceful than beforehand.
I mean, okay, well, you're talking about period blood magic, and literally, like I am holding back a gag at that. I mean, not because I am the type of guy who sex while on a period grossed me out for the longest time. Still kind of does. Still kind of does. And
yeah, it's not for everybody.
I mean, my own mother told me to fucking suck it up. It's just natural lube. But
Well, it's actually not very lubricating, by the way. If you want to have
it's
period
not.
sex, you need to
Yeah.
use lube because that's actually a dry part of your cycle. That's a big misconception that it's lubricating. But no,
Well,
and it's not for everyone, right? Like, and we didn't really talk about the witchcraft side of my life, but
oh damn!
it's
I honestly
it's
didn't think about it.
but it's interesting because people to each their own. No matter what your beliefs are, some folks are into this sort of magic, some folks are into this sort of magic. What I see blood as is pure life force, pure manifesting like juice that you can use to create the most wildly like imaginative and powerful life. And am I doing blood magic all the time? No, I've done it a couple times. It's not something that I'm super into every month. But again, it's just something that just
I mean,
like when we look at religion, right? Like the blood of Christ, blood magic. Like it's just fascinating that that's just something that all these women have,
yeah, I
and
mean,
yet some people are for it and some people aren't.
I mean, yeah, and all blood magic is not like people think blood magic. They think, oh, somebody cutting their freaking arm over a goblet to freaking do blood magic,
Right.
and it's a very dark and mysterious thing. And no, I mean, I never even thought of it that way. But I guess blood magic can be more natural and not self
My
harming.
blood magic is collecting my period blood and giving it to the earth. That's it. Or putting it on my face because there's so many stem cells that it makes your face like glow and be very, very, very snatched.
I'm so happy I didn't eat breakfast yet for that part. Just saying, just saying. But yeah, I ain't doing that part. But I mean, the earth part, yeah, okay, I can see that. I mean, if my wife wants to do the other part, then more power to her. But I don't think she would because I think she would find that not her style. But well, damn, witchcraft is a whole new. See, I learned about so many new forms of magic on this show. I freaking love it. But God, well, before I go off on a nerve here, probably, folks, let's let Leslie tell us where, because she is a podcast host as well, the Light Within podcast, which why don't you tell my audience what your podcast is about, where they can find it, and where they can find you?
Yeah. So my podcast is about all things spirituality, sexuality, wellness, and empowerment. We are launching fourth season in this month in January. And yeah, it's really an uncensored look at anything that lights me the fuck up. So I started it when I was still in TV and I felt very censored about what I could and couldn't speak about. And so this is a way for me to talk to healers, teachers, and thought leaders across the planet about really the things that allow us to awaken our own light within. You can find me there. You can find me at Leslie Draffin on Instagram. And if you're a woman who's interested in learning more about ways to connect with pleasure, to connect with your womb, and the healing power of psychedelics, I have a beautiful group membership that is just launched called The Sanctuary, where we tap into the divine feminine and awaken our power and purpose. And I'd love to give you a code if you would like for folks to join. They can get a free month with the code Paranormal.
This will be dropping probably late February, early March. So yeah,
Wonderful.
we can set up around then and put it out. There currently is a promo code already, folks, for Bear Bridge Academy, which is basically a real life Zoom Hogwarts, and everything from we didn't talk about her teaching blood magic, or them teaching blood magic classes, I should say. But I mean, they do teach sex magic and dark magic and everything else in between. So I wouldn't be surprised if blood magic comes up in at least one of those classes at some point. But yeah, that promo code is still good. Paranormal 20, I think it is. It's posted in all my groups that are in the outro, so feel free to check it out there. And this one will be posted there as well and pinned up and everything, so people can find it and use it. But okay, we got to touch this real fast. But yeah, Chapley does say even if you're doing it all the time, more power to you. And she's heard of women using semen on the face as well, like making creams with it and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, well, yeah, it's protein, so why not?
Yeah.
But I mean, and they've been doing that in the porn industry for a good 50 years. So I'm just saying. But yeah, folks, please go check out Leslie's podcast, check out her site, and to all my lady listeners, I wish there was more of you because I think I do have a slightly bigger men demographic listeners. But feel free to take advantage of it. Come on. You don't get a free month in these type of things often. So take advantage of it and use it up. And you all know where you can find me. If you don't know, shame, but check the outro. It's all there. And other than that, I will thank Leslie once again for coming on because it's been an amazing hour interview. It flew by and it was fun talk. It was fun talk. Even stuff that slightly grossed me out was still fun talk. Because I don't get grossed out often, so that's an interesting feeling for me. And folks, I should be back this week coming up with, I think, 2, 3, or 4 more interviews. So more for you. You're welcome. And until next time, have a good Saturday, have a good weekend, and see you later.